What you call a black sheep, always happy, I know.
All right, it's Sunday again, and here we are. We're going to have a fun show this Sunday, and hopefully, my headphones will be working. We're talking about Dracula because I promised we would. I know Eric Merrick and a few other people love the vampire stuff, and this channel was focusing on a lot of Dracula initially back about a year ago, but see, I can't talk about Dracula every day, limited time, so it's just going to be intermittent. And today is a perfect day because Tuesday is World Dracula Day, May the 26th. That means that is the day that the novel Dracula was first published by author Bram Stoker. 129 years ago. So this year, Dracula is officially 129 years old, and we're going to be just having some fun talking about it. We'll do a little intermission, of course, in the middle of the way. So it should be good. I've got a playlist, guys. Playlist I created. It's pinned in the live chat, but if you go on the channel, the clusterfuck channel, the playlist should be right there. It is, I think there's 21 or 22 episodes of all the vampire Dracula stuff that this show has done. It's all on one playlist. You can find it there. I've put it in the live chat. Get my words properly. I put it in the live chat so you can find it there. And a lot of this stuff we're probably going to say today will be similar. I don't want to pound out and revisit too many things that we talked about in some of those videos, but there's some interesting stuff and you'll hear it again on this show. But if you want to watch like Dracula as a narcissist or me talking about a particular film or the most romantic Draculas, it's in that playlist. We're mainly going to focus on the book for the purpose of World Dracula Day. We will get into some pop culture stuff at the end, but we're going to have like an audio clip from the book. We're going to explore different elements, when it was created, the symbolism, all those kind of elements. And 21 pyramid, there's 21. I think there was another one on vampires, but I didn't include it. I'm not going to tell you why. I thought the guest was BSing me, so it's still up there. You can go find on the channel, but I didn't include it in the playlist because I thought it was a little bizarre. Anyways, this stuff is there. You guys can check it out. We've done a lot of shows on it, and I think, look, I probably first became aware of Dracula because of, like, I don't know, Count Von Count on Sesame Street, but I didn't really get into the literature part, actually reading the novel and understanding what was in the novel until I watched the 1992 Coppola movie. That's when I started to buy the books and the literature, Dracula, Frankenstein, Lord Byron poetry, looking at who some of these figures could be based off of. I bought the companion book that went with the 1992 movie. I don't have any of the stuff with me here. It's in storage, unfortunately. But that is when I became interested in the literature. We are mainly focusing on the literature today, but of course, the movies tie into that. And I mean, as we all know, it's really hard to take a book like Bram Stoker's Dracula that is written in journalistic style and transfer that directly to a movie. You know, people who write plays and movie scripts know that they're going to have to make some changes, for the platform and the art of film, that there's going to have to be some concessions, some editing, some taking the major theme of the book and sort of playing that through, and then they add their own elements. Every movie adds its own elements of the book, but the book itself is really a tome. It's really about Abraham Stoker, Bram Stoker. Some people say Abraham, but he's Bram Stoker. It's really about him and this surrounding life and all of the stuff that he was experiencing funneled into a horror book. And I mean, that's what horror usually is. You go to any horror movie or book, literature, whatever it is, a lot of this stuff comes from the person's psyche, whether it's Dark Shadows, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, stuff like that. It comes from the author's psyche. There's something that's playing out, and Bram Stoker was no different. So we're going to go into that. Before we get into it, the whole element here and have fun, I've designed a PDF. I'm going to let you know that PDF is going to be uploaded for members of the YouTube channel. We're going to have it here today, but the PDF will be available on my drive for YouTube members. And that is a way you can support this channel. You can be a YouTube member starting at $2.99. There's a $5.99 level, and I believe there is it $8.99? Something like that. There's 3 different levels in which you can support the channel. You can go ahead and do that. There's super chats, super stickers. Of course, you can send those on over. And I know many of you can't do that. That's fine. Just chat, enjoy the show. Click those thumbs up because that helps it. As soon as you're watching this, if you click the thumbs up, it really helps things show up. It helps the algorithm recognize us, all that fun stuff. And of course, share the content. And the best thing is subscribe to the channel and make sure when you are looking at the videos, make sure to click the bell on the video so it reminds you. Sometimes YouTube's get sneaky and they won't remind you that this is coming up just because you're subscribed. You have to go on the video and click the little bell and say, hey, please remind me. Now, next week, just while I have many of you funneling in here, the live show is going to be on a Thursday. And I'm having Jaron Niche coming. I think we're going to talk about Trump taking over London concept and a bunch of other crazy stuff that's happening in the world. That is going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Jaron Niche of the Obelisk Podcast or Nox Mente are coming on. We're doing a little roundtable Thursday, the 28th at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll still do a stream on Sunday, but it'll probably be from my phone or something a little looser and not as planned. The Nazis versus the Freemason, I had to push that up to the first Sunday in June because I just need more time to get the information out there on that one. Been pretty busy. So we've got those lined up, and I'm going to try to get a guest to come in June. I haven't confirmed yet, so we'll see where that goes. Everything's so fun, but that is it. I don't know. Who do we got in the chat? Jonacide. Hey, Jonacide. We've got Pyramid 7. Woo woo. Dorothy, who says she's been into Dracula since she was 10. That's pretty intense. We got Eric Merrick, who recently, I believe he's read Dracula, so that's good. It's been a while since I've read it, so Eric's got an advantage over me because I haven't read it recently. I haven't had time. We got DAJC9JZ. Does that stand for something? I don't know. I'm going to Niche and Jerbear. That's right, Jonacide. They're going to be on Thursday. DA says, I was scared of vampires, but Barnabas Collins. Yeah, I liked Collinswood Manor. Well, Barnabas started out pretty nefarious, like vampires do, but he became that sort of anti-hero vampire that just wanted to be normal and get his long-lost love. You know, that sort of tragedy. And you look, Frankenstein, you know, there's some elements of Frankenstein that plays out here. We'll talk about it. We've got a slideshow to start off with, and we're going to go into some videos. We're going to start off with the creation of Dracula. YouTube added the last 3 letters. Oh, darn. So it's DAJC. We'll have to remember that. So Frankenstein Frankenstein is another great book with a really great origin story. Check it out, Mary Shelley. Some people are trying to say that Percy Shelley really wrote it. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know. There's check it out. It's a great book. Read it. It's, again, something that's vastly different than the movies that you'll see. But the movies, of course, the same thing as Dracula. They have to make it applicable to film. I mean, if you took the whole book and got it in there, people would probably fall asleep. They just can't sit and watch a movie for that long. So let's go to our scene here. Dracula, World Dracula Day. Actually, before we do that, let's pop over to the actual website. There is a website for World Dracula Day, people. I'll pop the link in the live chat here. You guys can check it out. We got some trivia here for you guys. I'm just trying to get that link. There you go. World Dracula Day, May 26th. Celebrating all things Dracula. Why not throw a party or join Melissa's live stream? They didn't write that. Just kidding. They just kind of go into it. But here's the timeline. The name Dracula was first written in 1047. A medieval chronicle from Wallachia records Vlad II joining the chivalric Order of the Dragon and taking the name Dracula, with his son later known as Dracula, meaning son of Dracula or son of the dragon. Interesting. 1047. You think it was later? Because I don't, maybe that's the first time that it was used, but there's no way that Vlad II could have used it in 1047 because they came much later. So I don't, maybe they have that date wrong. Yeah, that's interesting. But it goes through a little quick timeline of movies and then why celebrate history of World Dracula Day. The event was starting in 2017 by the Whitby Dracula Society, which is an organization based in the town of Whitby, England. This year was a special anniversary as it presented. This was written when it was 120 years old. This is 9 years old. They haven't updated this one very much, but you can check it out. Dracula helped define the modern idea of Eastern Europe. The novel captures Victorian anxiety about contagion and blood. We'll go through that. But that's the website, World Dracula Day, guys. Here we are. Dracula's high as fuck. And he was probably an energy vampire too. No doubt that is there. He needs you. He needs his victims to thrive and survive. So, of course, let's see here if I can get a little music in the background. Down low. Oops. There we go. So we have World Dracula Day, written by the author Abraham Stoker. Bram Stoker. I keep saying Abraham. I have a feeling that is totally wrong. Now, of course, he was born November 8th, 1847, Clontarf, Dublin, Ireland. I probably butchered that name. But there you have it. Now, he visited the coastal town of Whitby in 1890, and that visit was said to be part of the inspiration for Dracula, staying at the guest house in Westcliff at 6 Royal Crescent, doing his research at the public library at 7 Pier Road. And we know that most of Bram Stoker's information did not come because he traveled to these places. Most of the stuff is coming because Bram Stoker, he researched. He was a researcher. He was a sickly child. He passed away the time by reading a lot of books. And then for whatever reason, he came out of that sickness and became very athletic and did well academically and thrived as an adult. So apparently this public library was located, it's now a Quayside Fish and Chips. Interesting. Count Dracula, this is where he writes Dracula Coming to Shore, where he first arrives in England, Whitby. That is where he started writing the novel and where he was doing a lot of the research. I'm sure he used other libraries and other archives, but this was the location. And this is the location that inspired him. How does Dracula arrive? How does he get to England? Okay, so most of you guys, you guys know the storyline of Dracula. We have Jonathan Harker. He is this real estate agent from England. He's traveling to this unknown world of Romania. He's doing it for this eccentric count, and he's going to procure land for this count, this wealthy elite over in England. Very prophetic, I would say, for the future. And his journey there, he's met with red flag after red flag after bad omen after bad omen, warnings from the locals, which he poo-poos away with his logic, his modernity. And it's really that modernity versus the whole religious, superstitious, dark world that was considered a mystery. Romania was very mysterious to people over in England at the time. And of course, he becomes Dracula's captive and realizes all too late that he has paved the way, so to speak, for Dracula to just go in England and now taking advantage of the women of England, basically the Western world as he sees it. And he discovers what Dracula is. And so Dracula basically keeps him in the castle, traps him there. He escapes, and then Dracula goes along his way, thinking he's gonna just suck the blood of everybody. And of course, fortunately for us, all novels have heroes, and we have our heroes, but realistic heroes. Heroes like Van Helsing, Dr. Seward, Arthur Holmwood, that are there as a representative of good men of the West that are going to vanquish this evil count and put an end to him. I literally just summed up the storyline. But it gets more complex. A lot of people ask me, I've had people ask me, like, what should I read the book? And I'm like, will I like it? Like, I have it on audio. And I say, absolutely, read it. It's not going to be written like a modern story. It is in journal style, but you're going to get a whole lot of tidbits and information about life back in 1897 that you might not otherwise have gotten. Things about Romania, things about English culture that you wouldn't get from a modern book. You're going to get a modern take from it. Yeah. DA says they had Jack the Ripper too. Jack the Ripper, yeah, in London. It could have very well influenced this concept of East meets West, or immigrants coming over and invading the local population and doing harm. 100%. I always wondered how Bram Stoker saw Jack the Ripper, that kind of serial killer, sociopathic nature. So Stoker began writing novels while he was working as a manager for Irving and secretary and director of London's Lyceum Theatre. And we've got some clips that I want to go over about Stoker and Irving and their kind of dysfunctional relationship. But first, I think it would be good for us to go and see what Dacre Stoker, that is Bram Stoker's, I believe it's his great nephew. He's American now, but he talks about, because he got to go into all the archives and look at what was going on, and he actually talks about what influenced Bram Stoker. We've got a few videos on what influenced Bram Stoker. We'll go over that, but let's listen to Dacre, and then we're going to go into other elements of the influence. So I think if we go back to this, we can look at what Dacre says, because it's interesting. He gives us tidbits that you might not otherwise know. Don't tell me I closed it out. Did I close it out? Hold on. Did Sherlock Holmes was a fictional character? I don't know if he did on his I don't know if Sherlock Holmes looked at it on his in the book series. I was never a Sherlock Holmes fan, if you will. There we go. I found it again. It had closed out. Okay, so let's share that again. I don't know if they ever wrote about a vampire. I know they wrote about a black shuck, a black dog folklore, but I don't know about vampires. PH Media 901. I'm interested in how Bram Stoker made Dracula lure his victims. I've never read it, but I'm curious. Well, he's manipulative. He's kind of a sociopath. So he has an alluring sense, even though he's fetid and gross. Like when you meet him, there's this animalistic nature to him. He's urbane, he's authoritative, he's a elite royal, hairy palms. Like he's really described in a really kind of creepy manner, very animalistic. But I think he's got this magnetism, this seduction, this almost hypnotic effect on women, especially that like a predator might have. I can't get into detail because I don't have the book right before me and I don't have a clip on it, but I imagine that there's some kind of... So Dacre Stoker here is going to talk about Thornley Stoker, like different influences that he had other than the
Her
ones
family
that I know of.
were
So let's start this again.
and the Stoker family were all together very interested in things around them in society. The mother was a bit of an activist. She was a social worker as well. Bram worked as a clerk in the Petty Sessions legal department, then as inspector all over Ireland of legality. So they were very aware of things going on around them. The three brothers were doctors, my great-grandfather being one of them. Thornley Stoker, Bram's eldest brother, who helped him write Dracula, all the medical parts anyway, was very involved. And we'll learn as this interview goes on how I believe Renfield and the sort of the plight of the mentally ill were molded by Thornley.
So very interesting that I did not know, and you can go check out Dacre Stoker's full interview, that his family and Thornley Stoker had a good influence on how he saw the sort of Renfield character. I always thought there was something, and that doesn't mean that I'm wrong about that. There was something about himself and his relationship with Henry Irving, the sort of Renfield Dracula character. And we're going to go into this clip here because it kind of evolves more on the different influences that Bram had. It is, what's his name? He's British. He does a lot of things. Mark Gatiss. It's a clip from his show. This is out there. You type Mark Gatiss Dracula, and he has an In Search of Dracula, about an hour long. We're just going to watch a minute from it, where he talks about Bram Stoker's relationship with Henry Irving, who, of course, when Bram Stoker worked at Lyceum Theatre, he was the manager for Henry Irving, who was this very dramatic, a little narcissistic actor at the time. He was kind of full of himself. So he kind of gets into this element, another influence on Dracula's character.
And educated in Dublin, Abraham Bram Stoker began his career in the Irish civil service. But it was his passionate interest in the dramatic arts that led to unpaid work as a theatre critic for the Dublin Evening Mail. In December 1876, following a performance of Hamlet he attended, Stoker began a 28-year association with the most dominant, in every sense of the word, personality of his life, the legendary actor Sir Henry Irving.
Bram Stoker was invited by Henry Irving to come over as his business manager and assistant. And dropping everything in Dublin, that's exactly what he does. He moves over and works for Irving for 28 years. Stoker hero worshipped Irving. Irving exploited that. And Irving would say, Bram, I say, come here. He absolutely depended on his servitor to do things for him. One of his obituaries says, I have never known in my life the absorption of one man in another man's life as much as Stoker was absorbed in Irving's life. There was something almost umbilical about their relationship. I think Dracula is partly based on Irving's performances, Irving loved big supernatural parts where he could really, you know, with a strong slice of jambon attached.
But there are other theories as to the Count's origin. It was later claimed that it was a nightmare endured by Stoker after a meal of dressed crab that first inspired his creation. A ghastly vision that included 3 female vampire brides descending on their victim and their satanic master in.
He intones, "This man belongs to me," and I have a clip, an audio clip, which we'll get to in a second, of the actual that part from the novel. So there's this, he starts off with a nightmare. So Henry Irving's influencing this. His relatives, his brother influences a lot of the medical information, the stuff that he writes on insane asylums and Renfield. You can see he's pulling all this stuff from his life and surrounding him. His relationship with Henry Irving, the actor, is influencing this sort of grandiose kind of perception of the Count, but he actually starts with a nightmare that he has. So this tells me that this key element that's in the book, which is the scene where Jonathan Harker in the castle comes upon these brides and they try to seduce him and drink his blood. And he kind of had a nightmare that came from a dream. The same way Mary Shelley and Frankenstein, according to the lore, came from a nightmare, came from a dream. This idea of this kind of stitched up man and this idea of man taking over nature. It's always there. Taking not just nature, but, you know, superseding God and creating its own life. We're there. We're here, like in Crazy World all these years later. But Bram Stoker too has a dream, and their nightmare inspires the literature, and then they pull from other elements, like how are we going to do this? How are we going to create this figure? And all the complexities of Bram Stoker's life, all the complexity of English society comes together and gets molded into this character, into Dracula. Now, I'm going to play you guys a clip from the book that essentially Bram Stoker's writing out his nightmare. He's telling you his nightmare and his dream. And so we're going to listen to a portion of the book. It's about 4 minutes long, and I'm not going to interrupt. So you guys get to hear the novel and hear the language and the nightmare scene that inspired Bram Stoker to write this book. We're going to have to replace this here.
Unchanged in any way since I came into it, I could see along the floor in the brilliant moonlight my own footsteps marked where I had disturbed a long accumulation of dust. In the moonlight opposite me were 3 young women, ladies by their dress and manner. I thought at the time that I must be dreaming when I saw them. They threw no shadow on the floor. They came close to me and looked at me for some time, and then whispered together. 2 were dark and had high aquiline noses like the Count, and great dark piercing eyes that seemed to be almost red when contrasted with the pale yellow moon. The other was fair as can be, with great masses of golden hair and eyes like pale sapphires. I seemed somehow to know her face, and to know it in connection with some dreamy fear, but I couldn't recollect at the moment how or where. All 3 had brilliant white teeth that shone like pearls against the ruby of their voluptuous lips. There was something about them that made me uneasy, some longing, and at the same time, some deadly fear. I felt in my heart a wicked, burning desire that they would kiss me with those red lips. It is not good to note this down, lest someday it should meet Mina's eyes and cause her pain, but it's the truth. They whispered together, and then they all 3 laughed, such a silvery, musical laugh, but as hard as though the sound never could have come through the softness of human lips. It was like the intolerable tingling sweetness of water glasses when played on by a cunning hand. The fair girl shook her head coquettishly, and the other two urged her on. One said, "Go on. You are the first and we shall follow. Yours is the right to begin." The other added, "He is young and strong. There are kisses for us all." I lay quiet, looking out from under my eyelashes in an agony of delightful anticipation.
I am going to pause it and interject. So, Bram Stoker has had kind of a dark, erotic dream. He's calling it, they're saying it's a nightmare, but it's like a subconscious thing. He's had this dark dream about three kind of wanton, demonic, vampiric women, but he details in this description in the book that it's kind of a pleasure, but yet a horror. So there's this sort of inner struggle about these dark inner desires versus the propriety and the love for, in the book, his wife, and like a seduction, like a sin. And of course, we know that Bram Stoker, gets this vampiric idea, as do other people, from Leviticus, that it's a sin to drink the blood of a living creature. So it's like this is biblically the ultimate sin, and he is dreaming about this, that these creatures are doing this to him. So this is a total inner struggle about him, which is connected to the larger culture that he lives in. So let's continue.
The fair girl advanced and bent over me till I could feel the movement of her breath upon me. Sweet it was in one sense, honey-sweet, and sent the same tingling through the nerves as her voice, but with a bitter underlying the sweet, a bitter offensiveness, as one smells in blood. I was afraid to raise my eyelids, but looked out and saw perfectly under the lashes. The girl went on her knees and bent over me, simply gloating. There was a deliberate voluptuousness which was both thrilling and repulsive. And as she arched her neck, she actually licked her lips like an animal till I could see in the moonlight the moisture shining on the scarlet lips and on the red tongue as it lapped the white, sharp teeth. Lower and lower went her head as the lips went below the range of my mouth and chin and seemed to fasten on my throat. Then she paused, and I could hear the churning sound of her tongue as it licked her teeth and lips, and I could feel the hot breath on my neck. Then the skin at my throat began to tingle as one's flesh does when the hand that is to tickle it approaches nearer, nearer. I could feel the soft, shivering touch of the lips on the supersensitive skin of my throat, and the hard dents of two sharp teeth, just touching and pausing there. I closed my eyes in languorous ecstasy and waited with a beating heart. But at that instant, another sensation swept through me as quick as lightning. I was conscious of the presence of the Count and of his being, as if I lapped in a storm of fury. As my eyes opened involuntarily, I saw his strong hand grasp the slender neck of the fair woman, and with giant's power draw it back, the blue eyes transformed with fury, the white teeth champing with rage, and the fair cheeks blazing red with passion. But the Count, never did I imagine such wrath and fury even to the demons of the pit. His eyes were positively blazing.
There you go. So you see that they're the seductress, and then they switch, and you see this in all the movies with these kind of female vampires, and even the male vampires themselves, where they'll be seductive and they will be alluring and sweet, these descriptions, and then they'll switch: demonic, champing, vicious, this sort of inner demon. And it's interesting, in the chat, DAJC says something I think is really interesting about the dream. He says he had an incubus, succubus. It would be a succubus, and if it's female, soul-sucking entity creature dream. Maybe he did. Maybe he had some sort of thing. Maybe there really is. This is kind of real demon stuff as well. I mean, it's very possible, but it's weird. And a lot of people attribute this sort of homosexuality because Dracula interferes, stop the brides, and say, this man belongs to me. And they're like, what the heck is this? But remember, with Stoker, his relationship with Henry Irving was one where he idolized him the same way that Renfield idolizes Dracula. And Henry Irving interfered in his marriage and everything. Like he almost gave everything up and strained his marriage with his wife, all for Henry Irving. So it seems like he's had this dream about these three creatures, and then he's sort of weaved in a Dracula character into this, where he's like, this man belongs to me. You can't touch him. So people attribute homosexuality to it. Is it there? I don't know. It might be there, but there's definitely some kind of slave relationship to Dracula, whereas this man belongs to me. This is my slave. You don't touch him. And is it sexual? It might be. Does Dracula ever bite him? No. Does he want to? Probably. There is, in the 92 movie, that sort of, there's a scene where he's shaving, right? And Jonathan cuts himself, and Dracula just responds viscerally to the blood, and he licks the razor. I don't know if that's in the book. I can't remember. But there is this sort of strange, visceral, animalistic reaction to the nick that Jonathan gives himself with a razor. So it's weird. And all of Castle Dracula defies reality. It defies gravity. It seems like you're almost in another world. So let's pop back over here. Pop through. So we talked about the creation, the folklore inspirations from Eastern Europe. We're not going to get too much into the vampire folklore. We've done this on the show before, where Bram Stoker's, he's in the library, he's researching, he's going to grab different folklore, maybe even some Irish folklore about vampires. But there obviously is the infamous folklore from Romania, from Eastern Europe, about the type of vampire that, from what I can gather, it's not the neck. The neck, he is a very sexual thing. It's a very sensitive area. I think that's why he used it. In vampire folklore, it would be the chest. And there might be different ways, but the chest was definitely. The Vlad the Impaler connection, we'll get to that. I've got a video where they talk about the Vlad the Impaler connection. We know that he's probably seen these woodcut, Bram Stoker seen these woodcuts about Vlad the Impaler. Was Vlad the Impaler considered a vampire? Not. No. The depictions were probably propaganda showing him basically his preferred means of torture. And there were woodcuts of him dining amongst impaled victims. Was it real? I don't know if he really did that, but that's how Germany was showing him. And when Vlad became into power, one of the things that people don't know is a lot of Saxons were in Romania funding him. A lot of German people were funding Vlad in his countenance against the Turkish Empire and stuff like that. So they were very money orientated. So perhaps he got out of control, and they thought, well, we better put out some woodcuts here. We need a press release. Get the woodcut. I mean, it was hard to put out propaganda so quickly in those days, but it happened. You had woodcuts. I don't think you had the printing press. Did we have the printing press yet? Remind me when the printing press was created. Stoker's theater background. We talked about that. Storytelling. He started writing. He had to weave around and do Vacation Time and weave around his servitude to Henry Irving just to get this novel written. So he starts writing in 1890. So the Jack the Ripper comment, Jack the Ripper has happened. He definitely would have heard about it and been influenced by it. There's no way. But he is heavily influenced by theater because of Henry Irving. And we know that Henry Irving is in the pages of Dracula. Was Dracula created as entertainment, social commentary, or both? Pretty obvious it's both. I think it's a huge social commentary, whether he realizes it or not. And there's clearly an entertainment value to it, because when he first publishes Dracula, printing press, late 1400s. Okay. So, yeah, it's possible. Thank you, Psych Sonic. Anyways, when Bram Stoker first publishes Dracula, they try to say that there was a play done of it. It wasn't a play, it was a reading. Bram Stoker arranged a reading of the book in a play form at the Lyceum Theater, and that wasn't necessarily that it was a play. It was to establish copyright. It was putting it out there, Bram Stoker's this at a professional theater to establish the copyright that this book and all this work was Bram Stoker's. That's how you would do it. You would establish that. There was no radio in those days, so you had ways in which you could establish copyrights and that it was your property. And one of those ways was to have a reading of it theatrically before an audience. So he did do that. The Ultimate Outsider. Fear of foreigners, invasion themes, Victoria anxiety about immigration. Like I just mentioned, Jack the Ripper. A lot of people thought Jack the Ripper was a Jewish immigrant, and he actually probably was. They really think they've narrowed the DNA testing down to, what's his name? It'll come to me in a moment. Dracula entering England as symbolic contamination, the foreign aristocrat archetype. He doesn't just enter. I mean, Dracula shows up and starts sucking the blood out of the native English women, and he buys property there, and he, says that he wants to wander the mighty streets of London, and it's like the old world where it's all superstition and religion merging with this modern world of factories and innovation and typewriters and phonographs and science and discovery and all of that stuff that was coming out of the Industrial Revolution and medical. I mean, this shit has always been crazy, no matter where we're going, even today. But this sort of harnessing the world and taking it into your own hands, and there is that kind of clash going on there. This is a good one. The Castle and Psychological Horror. Jonathan Harker trapped inside Dracula's castle. I'm just going to pop up a picture of one of the castles. If you look at this one, this is from the 1992 movie. It's the castle. There's many renditions of Dracula's castle, but it's beyond the mountain range. You're secluded, but it kind of looks like an old man sitting on a throne. The way that they've designed it, this is just a model. Francis Ford Coppola did things in a very, I'm glad he didn't use CGI. Francis Ford Coppola had used CGI in the 1992 movie, it would totally be dated. He used your very traditional in-shot, on-set effects to make a film that had this sort of Art Nouveau, Victorian literature, Gothic feel to it. And speaking of which, we should probably, that one's 3 minutes long. Yeah. Anyways, we'll keep talking about the isolation, the paranoia. Jonathan Harker leaves the security that he knows in the West. He leaves communication. It's slowly cut off. He crosses the threshold into this castle, and he is now in the world of Dracula and these female brides and this horror that he cannot escape, and that he is forced to, even though he discovers what Dracula is, he is being manipulated, gaslit, just all these manipulation tactics, and he's forced to write letters to his loved ones and his boss, the lawyers back home, saying, hey, everything's okay. And then he comes to the realization, like, wow, this is what must have happened to Renfield, because he is replacing Renfield, and Renfield's back in England, locked up in a psych ward, essentially, because he's gone mad. And there's this theme that it's going to drive you mad, you're going to lose your sanity over in this realm that is far away from the modernity and the sophistication of the modern world. So he has no control over his life. Everything is revolving around Dracula and serving him and basically aiding in his eventual destruction of Jonathan's own world and his wife and all of that stuff. His I have an article, they're all free, over on Substack that talks about Dracula as a narcissistic psychopath. It's a two-parter. I'll pop it up in the live chat. You guys can go check it out. He's definitely a narcissist. He definitely has the criteria of a narcissist. There's no doubt. He is the grandiose sense of self-importance, fantasies of unlimited power. These are all the criteria of a narcissist. Belief in special, only understood by special high-status individuals, needing excessive admiration, entitlement, favorable treatment, interpersonal exploitation, lack of empathy, envy of others, or believing falsely that people are envious of you just because they criticize, arrogant, haughty. He has like this sort of psychopathy where Dracula is deceitful, impulsive, aggressive, reckless disregard for anyone else's safety. The ends justifies the mean, no remorse when harming each other. I mean, he just has it all. This super villain kind of thing. So the castle isn't just a castle. It is now a trap, a prison. And could it represent something in Bram Stoker where he feels trapped? Was this another dream? Because this is where the novel starts. He's dreaming about these three women and he places them as Dracula's bride, this sort of evil that comes from Dracula, where he is now surrounded by this. Is this Bram Stoker's nightmare? Does this castle represent this dark inner terror of Bram Stoker in his own psyche, and perhaps even the terror of the society at large? This castle, and oftentimes when we dream, if we're going into a house or a dark or a cave, we're going somewhere deep where we don't really want to explore ourselves, where we try to ignore in the living day light in our conscious life. But this book takes us there. It's taking us on this journey to the subconscious of Jonathan Harker and perhaps vicariously Bram Stoker, where we get to see what he's really afraid of and what lies await for him with this supposed, elite, very important client, right? And that's another element where it's like, it's about money. And so when you're not connected to your intuition and it's about money, you can walk yourself right into horror stories. We know that in politics, right? You can walk yourself into horrible people. Horrible people. I wonder if the same time frame as Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman, that's probably going to be in the later 1700s or just before 1776, right around then. That sort of American Revolution. So Sleepy Hollow is before Dracula quite a bit. I'm going to assume, if you're referring to the novel. So this is just some images of Stoker with Henry Irving, a great inspiration for the book. We're going to flip to Francis Ford Coppola in a minute, but I'm going to take PH Media's comment here before we get there. He says, narcissists are so insecure and self-absorbed, they can't put themselves in other people's shoes and have a hard time understanding others' psychology. Lack of empathy. Exactly. And when you get these kind of elite people that have Dracula's ruled for hundreds of years, this is their identity. They are the rulers. You are the subservient, pitiful thing. You do what they want you to, and without question. So let's go see what the great director Francis Ford Coppola had to say about Dracula and the inspiration for it and the basis for it. And I'll see if we have some other videos coming up here, but we're going to listen to Francis Ford Coppola. Then we're going to have a little intermission and we'll get to the other half and do some other things and talk about the whole concept, different concepts about Dracula, blood symbolism, all that stuff. So let's listen to Francis.
Bram Stoker's Dracula was written right around the same date that the cinema was invented. The idea was to make it as if we were making cinema in 1905. And so we used the style of the cinema at the time that the Bram Stoker Dracula was written. That was the concept. Every time I do a weird style, there's a reason.
And I love the opening scene for that film too, and how quickly you're on the film's wavelength. And in Megalopolis, there's that very visual of the shadows, and it kind of reminded me of those dark silhouettes.
That's a theater technique. That's what's known as a Lindenbach projector. In other words, and we use that in theater a lot, where you project shadows. Basically, I went to school as a theater major and having a career in theater, but I sort of made a left turn because one afternoon I had no money, I had no girlfriend, I had nothing, but I was a big shot in the theater department, I had all the keys of the theater department, and I was just waiting for rehearsal, and they were showing Sergei Eisenstein, October, 10 Days That Shook the World. I saw this Russian movie made by Eisenstein, you know, and I had never seen anything like it. And I came out of it, I said, wow, I'm going to be a movie director. I'm not going to go to Yale. I'm going to go to film school. And that changed my life.
In your process of realizing the architecture and design of Megalopolis, pulling from this deep well of personal fascinations that started 40 years ago, what did you discover, and what fascinates you most about architecture in a cinematic sense?
Well, I mean, I think there's no doubt that all artists control time. From the very first painter or cave painter made a scene of some animals, they were stopped. So you can't be an artist without essentially manipulating time. That quote of Goethe is very beautiful, that architecture is frozen in music. So as such, you know, I don't find it unusual to manipulate time. And filmmakers do it all the time. They're always going back and rewinding and repeating and manipulating. And maybe time itself, maybe we human beings don't understand time because our brain is so devoted to our survival that I wonder how accurately we really see the thing out there that we're in. You know, that there are Hindu philosophy that believes that all things are the same, you know, that the God of destruction and the God of creation is the same God. That means when we're standing on a mountain, down and up is the same thing, but we see down as, well, we better see it as down as death, because if we fall, we'll die, and up will be okay. So our human perception is so manipulated for our survival that it's not accurate.
Went a little off tangent onto Dracula, but it was some really interesting concepts. And I mean, the fact that he says artists manipulate time, and he's sort of taking us back in time to this Dracula movie. You can imagine why the CIA and all of the politicians want to be involved in cinema and movies so they can manipulate. Art? Is art time travel? You bet. You bet it is. Okay, guys, we're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to continue on that narrative and talk about the blood symbolism, the feminine figures. We've talked about the brides, but we'll get a little more in depth about Lucy, Mina, and this whole concept of this fear of the vampire in Victorian society and with Bram Stoker in general. So it's going to be about 7 minutes. Audio podcast people, you might want to bump it forward a little bit. I will be right back. Hold tight. All right, we are back. We are back. I let the dogs out. They created a terror with the neighbor dogs. They were barking, they were fighting. I was like, you guys, we only got 7 minutes. You got to get this dog fight done. I got some work to do. So they came back in time. So we're here. Everything is good and they're happy. They got their energy out. So we've got another hour to go. I think maybe a little bit longer. We'll see how long it takes me to get through this. We got some interesting comments. Dorothy talked about the Bible. We were talking about Leviticus earlier and how the blood is the life kind of quote, and the forbiddenness, how evil it is to drink blood from the living. It's not about meat eating. It's about living blood. Okay. I don't know why. That sounds like John's telling people to eat the flesh of the son. So I think, okay, so what John is saying here, I'm going to go. He says, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life. That's different. That's something different. This is the Son of Man. I think they're talking specifically about something. Jesus is referring to something very different than drinking the blood of the living. If you go to Leviticus, it talks about that kind of drinking the blood of a living creature is right out. Can't do it. You can look it up. It's out there. I believe it's in my article that I just gave you guys the link to. Actually, no, it's not in that article. It is in the one where I talk about adrenochrome, which I will give you guys the link to because I believe I wrote about it. I've got it here. I have it. Blood controlling the mirror, adrenochrome, and the vampire archetype, fear, folklore, and fact. I'll give you guys the link in the live chat. Everybody else, you'll just have to go to the Clusterfuck Substack. But you can check it out. It talks about Leviticus and blood drinking and the sin of it. And it may be in that other Dracula article as well. Yeah. Incognito says it's that's the sacrament. That's the sacrament. That's what they're talking about. Yeah, Jesus gave its symbolism, but you're not supposed to be like preying on the living and drinking the blood kind of thing. That I don't think that's the reference. So PH Media talked about narcissism and a relative. I met quite a few of them, and he says we all may be narcissistic to different degrees. So here's what I'm going to say about that. In all my researches on narcissism, there is having some narcissistic traits here and there. And then there's a personality disorders. Those are two different things. So just because you might be selfish one day or a jerk doesn't mean you have the personality disorder. There's a criteria, and it's the creation literally of a false self. It's not just being a jerk. You create a false persona. That's why the real people with the personality disorder are so insecure because it's a mechanism that protects something that they're trying to protect. And if you poke holes in the false persona, you threaten their whole game. So if we reveal that this narcissist isn't really who they say they are, they meet that with viciousness. That's why if you prod at the vampire, the viciousness comes out, right? So there's narcissistic traits where some people can be a little selfish here and there, but they can still learn and be empathetic. And then there's the personality disorder, which is probably not as common. Not as common. So there we go. Here we go. All right, so let's get back to our handy dandy PDF about Dracula. Remember, guys, thumbs up on the show. And The Predator, where everybody's talking about narcissism, charmed mixed with intimidation, emotional manipulation, predatory charisma. That's how Dracula lures them in. Predatory charisma. No doubt. Predatory charisma, addiction-like relationships. Early psychopath, Ted Bundy's, all those type of people, psychological domination over victims, early sociopath. I don't think it's a mistake that one of the most infamous serial killers early serial killers happened 3 years before Bram Stoker started writing this book. It's clear, and I believe I said this on the podcast before, that cities are a hub for narcissism, or they could create narcissists from an early age. Cities and abuse. There's this sort of predatory nature going on in cities when you have these large crowds where you can just sort of fold in with it and not get detected as easy as if you were in a tiny village. People are going to spot that out in smaller groups faster. They're going to be like, hey, Vladdy, he's up to something, but he goes to London and he can just weave around in the masses of the crowd and pick out a victim. It'll be hard to tell. But Van Helsing knows. Van Helsing knows. So we've kind of covered that at large, the predator. Now the females, women in Dracula, we've covered the brides. That was the basis. It's like you have these brides that are in such contrast to figures like Mina, right? To figures like Mina, who are good, strong English women, smart, can learn how to type. A good wife will nurture children, will help raise a family, as opposed to somebody like these brides who will eat your baby. Okay, these are not good women. And so Bram Stoker has a nightmare about this. It's obviously some subconscious thing and wrapped up in sexuality, but these women, these kind of wanton women, I don't think Bram Stoker was trying to say Eastern European women are like this, because he does show women in the book warning him that are Eastern European, like, don't go to this castle. So I don't think it's that, but it's this idea of this woman that is using sexuality to manipulate men, that would harm children, that would not be a good mother, that would eat the blood of a baby. There's the scene in Dracula after Dracula throws those women off of Jonathan Harker, that they are like, well, what are we supposed to have tonight? That's our meal. And Dracula presents them with this baby that he's literally stolen from a village woman. And it's a much more horrendous scene actually in the book than it is even in the movie. But you get this idea that these are such evil women that they don't even have the ability to be mothering and nurturing and love their children. Addicts will hurt their children, all that kind of deal. So there's this contrast between Mina and these women. And there's this fear that Dracula is going to come in and turn Mina into one of those women, that these narcissists can control and manipulate and turn your wife into this evil thing that will devour her children and will hurt and manipulate other men and will not be faithful. We're not getting into the man faithful thing because that happens too. But then you have Lucy Westenra in the book, and she's an easier victim. Let's just put it that way. She's Dracula's first victim. He's able to lure Lucy out easier. Easier, is that a word? She is lured from her bedroom out to the shipwreck, out to this sort of graveyard in Whitby, and she's one of Dracula's first victims when he comes to London, and she succumbs to this very easy, whereas Mina has this more stoic personality where she's resolute. Even though she does fall victim to Dracula eventually, she becomes resolute in helping the crew of men hunt Dracula out, chase him back to his castle once he flees, and vanquish him for all good. So in all the movies that you see where you slowly see over the 20th century of Dracula turning into a more empathetic character, that does not exist in the book. Dracula does not love Mina. He does not express like, you will be my one and only bride. She is being used. Yes, she'll be a bride, but she is being used. This is cruel. She is not really wanting it. He's presented as a cruel individual. Not good at all. There's no fallen angel warrior kind of figure at all. He is just evil. Okay, so it's innocence versus corruption. Why does Lucy's transformation shock readers? Because Lucy is the figure where they show you what Dracula does to women, how he transforms them into this creature that will become like the other brides, kill babies. Like there's that scene where Lucy is this nice, pure, virtuous girl. In the 1992 movie, they kind of present her as a little hoey. She's not like that in the book at all. She's not like that at all. She might have a little flights of fancy and not be as stoic as Mina, but she's still a very pure girl who just wants to get married, and she tends to fantasize, probably likes romance books, that kind of thing. She's not as practical as Mina, but her transformation becomes that they catch her in her crypt, like with a baby that she's about to eat. So it would have been really, it's shocking for me. It would have been really shocking in Victorian society to see this woman transform into a baby eating monster. And like I've already highlighted to you, Mina is quite the restraint. And then, of course, there's the bride. These are the brides from the 1931 movie. They're actually kind of reserved, but you have to remember censorship, okay? But you can go through movies and see all different kinds of brides and female characters and how evil they're presented, but they are not someone you're going to say, hey, you want around your child. They're not somebody that you're going to trust. They can turn on a dime. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, you get these feminist version who will say, oh, you've got these men hunting down these female vampires and they chop her head off. It's totally misogynistic. but they fail to actually remember that these females are eating babies and they are not good, okay? And they're trying to save their women from turning into something that is that grotesquely evil that it would harm a child. So here we go. Symbolism in blood. I know I have videos to share with you guys. I think I've done 3 of them. Let me see what other ones we have. Yeah, we'll get into I think these 2 clips we'll do at the end, but this is symbolism in blood. Blood is a life force. Dorothy just talked about sort of symbolism in the Bible, blood as contamination fears, religious symbolism in the Bible. Leviticus talking about eating the blood of a living. It really becomes in this book, and I'm going to show you a video on TikTok where she talks about like an inversion of the sacrament. Mike mentioned the sacrament. I think the quote that Dorothy showed talked about the sacrament. In Dracula, it's an inversion of it. It is totally showing how anti-Christian this really is. There's also this idea that if you keep draining the blood from the living, you will be immortal. Renfield says the blood is the life and it shall be mine, you know, that kind of thing. That actually I think that's said in the beginning of the 92 movie. When he's transforming into a vampire, they show his kind of backstory that they don't show in the book. But it's the idea that blood is fascinating, that blood is, if it leaves your body, life leaves your body. And that would have been something that in the folklore people would have known. They would have made that connection to blood and life. If you bleed out the blood, you die. And the contamination fears, I mean, we're still dealing with that kind of idea. Blood can be contaminated. Blood can spread diseases, rats. And you see in the movie Nosferatu, when Nosferatu comes into that harbor, he comes in and he brings in scores of rats, which brings about the plague. Not only does he show up in this town in Germany, he shows up with the plague and rats. So there's all this idea about disease and viruses. There could be syphilis. You see in the 1992 movie that these kind of modern science discoveries are kind of implying that the spread of disease and what to do about it and how they can use science to defeat it. And it is there. And we're going to look at a video on hematophagy. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, DA says, I studied that. We're not supposed to be living in cities as people. I don't think we're engineered for it. Certainly not major, massive cities. It is why we're so tribal. So let's go back to our screen. We're going to go to TikTok and look for that video on hematophagy and maybe check out a few other ones. Share screen. Where are you, TikTok? There we go. And this guy is called Lugosi Theater. He does all his videos dressed up as a Lugosi vampire. We'll check out some of his videos later. It's cute. But I think we're going to go here. And where is that video? There it is. Let's check what.
So basically, Dracula is Satan and hematophagy is communion. Hello friends and welcome back to Literary Analysis with Emmeline, myself, and today we will be doing a literary analysis on Bram Stoker's Dracula through the lens of a former Christian. So given the time period that Dracula was written in and the excessive use of blatant religious symbolism within the text, it is not a large jump to come to the conclusion that anytime hematophagy is performed in Dracula, it is symbolic of a twisted, unholy version of communion. And you may be asking yourself, what even is hematophagy? Hematophagy is the consumption of that sweet, sweet life juice. Now, the most damning piece of evidence for this theory actually comes from Renfield. In chapter 11, from an excerpt in Seward's diary, we get the lines of dialogue, "The blood is life, the blood is life," from Renfield. Now, this is a direct quote from the Bible referring to communion, but we also learn the interesting tidbit that to Renfield, consuming blood strengthens his vital powers, which we can only assume he learned from Dracula. In a later conversation with Renfield in the asylum, we also learn that he no longer wishes to consume human blood, for he claims that he has no use for souls, implying that in this universe, drinking one's blood not only drains them physically, but also spiritually in taking their soul. While we should take most of what Renfield says with a grain of salt, given that he is deemed the madman, I do believe that there's truth to his words here, in that a lot of the things he says about Dracula prove to later be true. Now, in Christianity, it is believed that receiving communion, which is eating the little cracker and wine that is symbolic of Jesus's body and blood, it strengthens you physically, and it is known to be a remedy within the church for physical ailments.
Right, and it's symbolic. It's a symbolism, probably psychologically symbolic of that. But if you are going after the blood, you're taking someone's life and their spirit, and that's why we get into the adrenochrome and all that stuff with the elites. It's in my article that I gave you guys, so we'll continue here.
But it is also supposed to bring you closer to God and make sure your soul goes to heaven as long as you keep receiving communion. However, whenever Dracula drinks someone's blood, he is weakening them physically and also stealing their soul. In this way, it could be painted with him being some version of a demon, if not actually supposed to be representative of the devil incarnate. A further support from this theory is that Dracula can supposedly only bite those who want to
Wow,
be
this
bitten,
music's
even if only
loud.
subconsciously. This is similar to how, in the Bible, the devil can only take the souls of people who are willing to give in to temptation. Under this religious analysis lens, we can see the parallels between communion and Dracula's twisted version of reverse communion. And with the heavy religious symbolism, it's not a stretch to say that this is perhaps what Bram Stoker intended. Of course, this is just one way to analyze hematophagy in Dracula. When looking at it under a feminist lens, it becomes an entirely different concept.
Oh, we're not going to look at it under a feminist lens, because a feminist lens will, the problem is it kind of skews everything into that. Yeah, everything. I mean, under a feminist lens, everybody will be evil. Even the heroes of the book will be misogynists, right? As if there's no male victims of Dracula. So, yeah, the hematophagy in the blood symbolism is very important in this book. You can see it there with this, like she said, inversion of the communion in the sacrament. Whereas when you go, Jesus is giving you something that restores you, whereas Dracula is performing a communion with you that drains you and takes your soul. So he's kind of acting like an antichrist figure, like an inversion of Jesus. It's a very interesting that I don't know if Bram Stoker consciously meant that. I can't imagine he didn't. And remember, his brother helped him with a lot of the medical stuff and the insane asylum stuff. So what, he would have understood things about diseases and stuff like that. And it's all riddled throughout, especially Francis Ford Coppola's movie. You can see there's a scene where Dr. Seward is kind of approaching Abraham Van Helsing in a lecture hall, and they have a cut to like a transfer scene with sort of cells, blood cells under a microscope kind of thing, and it's visually really well done. But the blood is the life, the blood is the life. It's very interesting stuff. The symbolism is definitely there, because that is what everything's about in this book, is taking the life, the blood, the life of the culture, the life of the people, and draining it. Isn't that what elites are doing now? Why blood still fascinates audiences culturally? Because that symbolism and the blood is life never changes. It is true. It is real. And I don't know how modern society deals with that, or these tech bros. Are they going to make fake blood? They can make blood. Maybe they can make blood now. I don't know what's going on. They always seem to want you to donate blood. That's for sure. Anyways, symbolism in blood, a big thing. It is there 100%. Let's move on. And there we got the females. We've got Lucy, Mina, our narcissistic Dracula. We've got a couple renditions of the bride, the women of Dracula, and how he does an inversion with them. Remember, he's married. These are his brides. He's marrying them. It's not a holy marriage to create life. It's a marriage to drain life. It's total inversion of everything good. That is there. 100%. Dun, da, da, da. The Epstein vampire camp. Yeah. Jeffrey Epstein meets Dracula, meets Donald Trump. I don't know. Religion versus modernity. Okay. I've mentioned this already in the whole thing. You've got Van Helsing, who is kind of balancing science and mysticism. You go and look at the Bram Stoker's Dracula movie 92, you look in the journals, Mina is learning to type shorthand, and there's telegrams, phonographs, all these modern technologies that are available in London. It is not there when he goes to Romania. The further away from home he gets, the more he gets immersed in religion and superstition, and has to go into another world. Literally another world. If you go and look at the lost my train of thought. Anyways, he's merging into another world where he has no access, or there's very little communication. And there are some really interesting tidbits that Bram Stoker has included in his book. Like the Stoker movie, you'll see this when when Jonathan is going to Castle Dracula, he's on the coach. He gets picked up by Dracula. He thinks it's Dracula's coachman, but it's actually Dracula dressed up, because there's nobody else in the castle but him and the bride. And they're going to the castle, and they pass through this sort of ring of fire, and you're thinking, what the heck is that? Is this just some fancy visual stuff? No, it's in the book. And it's something that appears on this really dark night, it's something to do with the Feast of St. George. Like, that kind of folklore is in there that I don't necessarily understand, but it's in the book, this sort of ring, and people are warning him not to go to this castle. That this is a bad night. It's a bad castle. It's a bad, counts. Like, this is not good. And so they show all these weird, strange phenomena that happen in this land of Romania that defies science, defies modernity. And he's like puzzled by it. He's like, where am I going? What am I getting myself into? And he's trying to keep hold of his logical, modern, lawyer-based, science-based mind. But the further he goes into it, he's literally losing it. His whole world's cracking. And there's this fear of going insane as you go deeper into this sort of superstitious world. And isn't that what happens when you start exploring and even investigating? I've called it psychic backlash before, but this type of thing happens when you start exploring these really dark rituals and the cult and the elite, the Epsteins. Things start going weird. it's like defies reality. Strange things start happening in your life. It's a thing. And so, can science explain evil? Can science defeat Dracula? No. What do they have to use in the book to defeat Dracula? Does their guns? I mean, the Bowie knife, yeah. But they have to have, in a lot of vampire movies, you have to have that face, the cross, the holy water. That is brought back to the foray. It's placed right front and center, that this is a religious battle. You hear people say that today. That you can't defeat this evil using science. You have to have faith. You have to have the belief in God. You have to restore your soul. You have to, put the holy water on his grave. You have to knock out all the places he can rest. The cross protects you. There's all these superstitions, but it delves back into defeating Dracula. It's a very religious and spiritual battle, not necessarily one that's going to be defeated with logic necessarily. And that's why Van Helsing is the ultimate hero in the book, because he kind of has a balance of it. He understands the mysticism, the spirituality, that there's these creatures that exist beyond the pale of mankind that you have to, defeat using the knowledge of mysticism and the world of spirituality or religion. So it's all throughout the book. Check it out. Pop culture, we'll get to the pop culture part. We really will. But I'm gonna go and look at Dracula.
Bram Stoker's Dracula was.
We're gonna stop. We're gonna get into that sort of world of the real Dracula and the mythology, and we're gonna look at a clip from a documentary that was done in the 70s with Christopher Lee, where they kind of connect the real Romanian Vlad the Impaler to Dracula, just for funsies. Let's go have a look. Replace. Here we go. Enjoy, guys.
Vlad Tepes Dracula was a Wallachian prince of the 15th century, described in contemporary German pamphlets as a monster of tyrannical cruelty. Stoker was fascinated by Vlad and decided to resurrect him as Count Dracula. There is no evidence that Vlad Dracula was regarded as a vampire in his own times. Stoker simply drew upon the rich Romanian vampire tradition in creating his Dracula. Count Dracula, as described in the novel, closely resembles various 15th century portraits of Vlad. Stoker writes, his face was a strong aquiline with a thin, high-bridged nose and peculiarly arched nostrils. His eyebrows were very massive, almost meeting over the nose and with bushy hair that seemed to curl in its own profusion. The mouth, as far as I could see under the heavy moustache, was fixed and rather cruel-looking. Vlad Dracula came to the throne of Wallachia in 1456 under the protection of Hungary. He was best known as Tepes, which means impaler, because of his fondness for that form of execution. However, he was also known as Dracula, which can mean either...
There you go. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a taste of kind of the scenery in Romania and the connections that this book has to Vlad the Impaler. I don't know if he knew a lot about Vlad the Impaler. Obviously, the name Dracula stands out. He's clearly, it's directly from Vlad. And the idea they're saying, I was looking at some clips and they were talking about Dracula. Was Dracula, sorry, my throat's getting a little dry. Was Dracula a vampire? Did people think of him as a vampire at the time? And I don't think so in those woodcuts. I think it was more that they were trying to outline the viciousness of his campaigns and his torture, and that he was kind of crazy. And he probably had some big enemies that kind of wanted him gone. And so the tie there is with the name. we're going to look at some other interesting things that's in the book. Chicken paprika. I think we've mentioned this on the show before, but we're definitely going to do it. Oh, we don't have to. We don't have to change screens. I'm actually going to do this video here. Let's check out this one here.
Dracula by Bram Stoker, originally published in 1897. Dracula is a type of novel that I would almost wish that we could...
Okay, we're going to have to actually cancel that one. It has the soundtrack, so we can't listen to that. We'll get copyright. Dracula, let's go into the chicken. Let's watch this guy. He's going to recreate the chicken recipe. Like, this is how intricate the book gets. He talks about chicken paprika. He talks about like a plum brandy, all the folklore, but he actually includes recipes from the area and all these details in Jonathan Harker's journal, the way you would write in a journal. You know, if you were, remember back in those times, you would have written in a journal in detail. You didn't have video stuff like we do today. You didn't have phones. You couldn't call people. You might send, you know, a wire or something like that, but you would have been tracking things so people could read later and read your explorations and your thoughts and stuff. This would have been common practice, a lot more common than today. So this is one of the recipes right from the book that's inspiring people. People are like, can we make this? What is this chicken paprika? Here we go.
This is Paprika Hendel, and it was mentioned in the opening chapter of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Now in the novel, the character Jonathan Harker eats this dish on his way to meet Count Dracula to do a real estate deal. Spoiler alert, it does not go well for Jonathan, but this Paprika Hendel went very well for me. I used a Hungarian recipe published in 1892, just a few years before the novel came out. And even though it's over 130 years old, the dish is very similar to the way that it's still served today. Just chicken simmered with onions, some sour cream, and a lot of paprika. Hence the name Paprika Hendel, Hendel being a German word for chicken. Now when the novel was written, Transylvania was still part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, hence the German name, but today it's more often called paprikas cirka, or chicken paprikash, and it's traditionally served with little dumplings called galushka, or nokedli. Those are just a simple dough pushed through little holes into some boiling water. It was made that way in 1892, and it's still made that way today, and they go very well with the delicious Paprika Hendel. Now the chicken is tender, it's almost falling apart, and the sauce is creamy and filled with that flavor of sweet paprika, a staple of Hungarian cuisine. Full recipe is in the longer video up on YouTube or at tastinghistory.com. This is paprika.
All right, you guys. So if you want to make chicken paprika, you know where to go. This is tasting history. You can just put tasting history, chicken paprika, Dracula, and you'll find it. You guys can go and recreate your journey. Remember, we have a video also up that we did an interview with Dr. Dean Bertram, and he talked about his visit to Romania in the Carpathians before the wall fell in Eastern Europe. So it was literally like going into medieval Romania, kinda. And that's out there. That's in the playlist. You should check that out because he kind of got a little taste of Dracula just being there. And the devastation in the in Eastern European from communist and fascist dictatorship. So let's go back to this one. We've got the pulp culture. Okay, Dracula isn't Dracula unless we would have nothing. We would not have Dracula today. We wouldn't be talking about this if the novel hadn't been adapted into a play, into movies, into merchandise, into television. It was that transformation that has pulled Dracula into pop culture and kept it immortal. We literally feed our life force to Dracula every day when we watch the movie, when we engage in this content. We keep Dracula alive. It's an egregore. We literally create this Dracula figure and keep it alive by engaging in this. And therefore, we are part of the immortality of Dracula, whether we like it or not. The difference between the book and Dracula and the movie, we could go on forever about the differences. There is clear differences in most of the movies. We aren't going to get the same characters. Very few movies do see Quincy P. Morris, the Texan. very few movies do you even get to see Arthur Holmwood and Dr. Seward in their proper respects. A lot of the movies you don't get to see that Lucy Westenra has a mother, right? There is a lot of, they switch the characters out. Mina is Lucy is Mina. In some of the movies, you don't even have a brides. Like in the Dracula with Frank Langella, there isn't even any brides. They play around with the narratives a lot. One of the movies that is closest, I think, would be the BBC Dracula from the 70s with Louis Jourdan. That's a pretty good adaptation of the book. So I recommend you check that one out. There's so many differences because they have to adapt it. Like, just for instance, there's no way Dracula was a dapper man in a top hat and a cape. In the book, he's foul, hairy palms. He does grow younger. And a lot of movies, you don't see that. You do see that in the Gary Oldman film, where Dracula, as he consumes our life and our blood as humans, he grows younger. They show that clearly in the new film in 2025, 2026, the one that's just out, but that was not always shown. I believe Christopher Lee, when he got vanquished, he kind of went gray, and same with Frank Langella, but they're always presented in this youthful form originally, very seductive. And I think it's because it's visually appealing. Dracula, I can't even get into. We could just list Anne Rice, Chelsea Quinn Yarbough, how they're influencing modern vampire fiction. It's endless. The vampire fiction is alive because of Dracula and these films. And Hollywood would be less of a thing if it wasn't for Dracula. If it wasn't for vampires being there. Quite often, these kind of movies saved certain studios. Francis Ford Coppola, his Dracula films saved Zoetrope Studios. I'm sure the 1931 Dracula boosted Universal. Beyond, yeah, Kirby says, the original Dracula smells like death and he has really bad breath. Yeah, exactly. Lucas Williams, hey, good to see you. But yeah, the pop culture influence, I don't even know how measurable it is. It's so embedded into our mind. We got Von Count. He's literally on children's shows. A vampire. He's not as violent. He's watered down. He's just counting things. But he's there. He's on cereal boxes. He's on t-shirts. He's in music. He's a Halloween costume. You could go on and on about the ways that Dracula has showed up to affect our culture. And they always revive him. Every generation, they pump it back up and they give this generation the Dracula movie. Okay. Let's go. I've got, let's pop over here.
Bram Stoker's Dracula.
We're going to get into a little bit more because this is one of my favorite Draculas. I have a lot of Dracula films I like. Like, I do like the Count Yorga, the two Count Yorga films. They're really good. He's kind of a spooky evil. He's really evil. We're going to look at another clip about the Gary Oldman Dracula. Let's see. I believe it's an interview with Gary for a minute. Let's check it out.
How many looks do I have? I'm the old Dracula. The old demonic Dracula. The young wolfen Dracula. I'm a bat. I come in the shape of a mist. I turn into rats. I have this look with the beard. I'm the young romantic Dracula. The sword play. Romanian.
Very good.
Endless fillings. It's the most exhausting thing I've ever had to do. Physically.
That's good, Gary. A lot of stimulating stuff to think about. Okay, let's shoot this. What's happening, boss?
I always had the idea that when you were in the presence of a vampire, the laws of physics were not exactly the same.
All right, stand by for rehearsal.
The laws of physics are defied. That is why science and physics can't defeat Dracula. There you have it. Coppola said it. And you got to see all the renditions. That's the thing. Dracula is transformative. He's not really human, is he? You can't really be human if you become a mist, if you can become a wolf, a bat, a rat, young, old. And now in this one, it is implied in the book that he's ancient and that he's fought battles. There's an implication. There's lines in the book, but it's directly shown to you in the Coppola film. His origins, that his wife basically jumps to her death thinking that he's dead, and he renounces God. See, in the book, he renounces, not in the book, in the Coppola movie, he renounces God and becomes his own version of the church. Remember, we talked about the inversion, the sacrament, the inversion of marriage. It's not a holy union to create life. It's have a harem of women and suck the life out of other people. Take their spirit, take their soul so you can live forever. It's not a natural form. Dave says, I used to work in a bookstore. I read the book on breaks in like 5 days. I should probably revisit it. Seems like I missed a lot. Okay. You can also, there is the audiobook. I will see if I can find it for you guys. I mean, you could just type it up. There is the audiobook though. On YouTube. You can go listen to it for free. You don't even have to pay. I'm gonna get this for you guys. You can type up Dracula audiobook, but I'm pretty sure I have it saved here somewhere. At least it's some of it. There we go. I'll pop it to you guys. But yeah, if you guys don't have time to read and you're busy, play the book. It's good. And I showed you guys a little clip of it. That was the inspiring scene. That was the nightmare scene, basically, that Bram Stoker had that inspired him to write the book. So I showed you a clip of that because it's kind of origin stories, but it's hours and hours long. DA reminds us about Herman Munster. His son Eddie was a vampire boy. Grandpa was a count vampire. Lily Munster was a gothic vampire. There you go. You had it. Was there any vampires in the Addams Family? I don't remember. But yeah, it's on TV. It's probably a vampire on Scooby-Doo. You know, it's all over the place. And I don't think we can, it's been probably one of the most prominent figures of horror in modern times. That I don't think any other figure in Frankenstein, none of them can contend with it. The level, and Dracula, as he transforms from a mist to all these figures, he transforms in the movies. He transforms to mean different things. Feminist, he means something different. Each generation has a take. He kind of represents whatever's going on in the culture. So what he represented for Bram Stoker might transform. He might represent something else. Dracula 2000, in that movie, he was literally Judas. You know what I mean? Like everybody, there's a different rendition. In the 92 movie, he's a falling angel who has to be redeemed. The same thing happens in the 2025-26 movie. There's a redemption theme there for him and the lost love. There's that lost love theme that's carrying out. So he kind of morphs and transforms. PSYOP is a psychological operation. PH Media, sounds like the first PSYOP, the first psychological operation. Dracula. You can elaborate on that one if you'd like. The first psychological operation. We're going to go back to our PDF here and finish it up. But there's so many ways in which Dracula has pervaded pop culture that we could go on. Lunch boxes, pajamas, t-shirts, Pez dispensers. I mean, I can keep going on and on. And what's the allure? it seems like there is this inversion of Christianity. It's taken hold with Dracula. He should remain the villain, and we should recognize that there's this inversion of the sacrament. Bram Stoker would have known that was bad. That's why he's the villain. We have morphed him into something different, even though he's originally, it's like the Antichrist invading our mind. He's originally this inversion of the sacrament and things that are good. And now we're like, yay, we love Dracula, put him everywhere. It's kind of creepy. It is kind of creepy, but we should kind of realize that one. All right, so we've got darker and hidden themes. Fear of disease, we've talked about. Sexual repression, I've mentioned that there could be some, there definitely is some sexual repression. Addiction metaphors, tons of addiction that is also displayed in the 92 movie. They're addicted to the blood. Renfield craves it. He's trying to get it from bugs. Like it's like a crackhead crawling on the floor trying to get the last piece of crack. He's trying to get it from bugs. The fear of, right there, 100%. Dave, do you mean when I meant like it was meant to invert Christianity? That's the psychological operation, that we're kind of accepting it in reverse. We don't understand its original origins. That's bad. We kind of accepted it, inverted things. Yeah. This is a good discussion. A fear of aging and death, big time. I remember reading so many short stories where, it was like Dracula gave his blood to this aging mother, and she was now younger than the daughter, and all, like, there's this fear, this like, we don't want to die. It's like we don't believe that there's something after life, that we want to stay here young forever. And the people in the book or the novel or a movie will accept Dracula's gift because they think it's this beautiful immortality, when it's an inversion and a curse. Yeah. Colonial anxieties. As we, go, England is king of colonialism from Rome, but as we go into these lands that are unknown, that we might fall prey to them, or what's in them, what evils lie there. Spiritual corruption. The draining of the blood is the draining of the spirituality. There's a corrupt element to it that if you go down that path, you'll never return. Renfield's damned. He's kind of damned. He kind of tries to redeem himself at the end, but Dracula does kill him. Hope I didn't ruin the book for you guys. But yeah, all of these themes are embedded into Dracula, whether he knows it or not, or we might just be seeing them. But it shows you that, human fears are still the same. There's human fears that were at Stoker's time that still exist today. The mortality. Dracula can give you mortality. Science and religion. Showing pop culture here. We're showing the good Dr. Seward. Lucy, she's the inversion. The cross, the spiritual element has to defeat them. Put them at bay. Only God can kind of, have that power. The cross, Christ, all that stuff. And then we have Abraham Van Helsing, who is the balance of mysticism and the scientific method. He, although as a man of science, he understands this mystical world, these creatures that he's been researching that people just don't believe in. Boom. So support the channel, of course, subscribe, leave comment, thumbs up, and you can also become a member. Thank you guys very much. That is the actual presentation. I appreciate everybody. What is your guys' favorite? What's your guys' favorite Dracula movie or thing about Dracula in the culture? Like, what really gravitated to you guys? I think for me, Francis Ford Coppola's version, I was younger. It was really well done. I like that there was a theatricalness to it. There was an operatic element to it. And he really tried to convey this artistic nature at the time, this Art Nouveau. When film first came to the foray, he shows that in his movie. There's a scene with Mina Murray and Dracula in this cinematography. They're in the cinema house, okay? I'm not saying it right, but they're showing like this, the wonder of the new world. We've got films. We can capture your soul right here on celluloid. So it's all there, and this is the birth of this new world. And here we are, 129 years later, and we're like, where are we going? I think they're gonna suck our brains into a cloud. I'm not so liking this. DA says he likes the original black and white vampire movies. There's some really good ones. Obviously the 1931 Dracula. I'm trying to think of some other ones like Daughter of Dracula. There's like the Daughter of Dracula or something like that. They're escaping me right now. There's several Dracula. Abbott and Costello, Nosferatu. Yeah, there's Nosferatu, the silent film. I like the 1979 Nosferatu with Klaus Kinski. It's quite a good film. You should check it out. I know there's going to be a lot of boomers who are big on Hammer horror. One of the most imposing Draculas, Christopher Lee. Very, very well done. But still, there's a lot of liberties taking. I recommend everybody to go check out the original novel. And maybe on Tuesday, was Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire good? Or the original books are very good. I preferred The Vampire Lestat. I thought it was better than Interview with the Vampire. I don't like the new TV series, whatever that's out on Prime, Amazon. It's too flagrantly in your face, like gay, pretty much. The gay context is in the book, by the way, but they're just like, it's like they have no creative resources. They're like, we're just going to throw it right in your face. We're not even having just an undertone. But yeah, Interview with the Vampire is good. I like the book, like the Vampire Lestat. But I think it was better. Is good. So you can check that out. Frank Langella's Dracula. I like it. He's one of the tops. He's one of my tops. I didn't mind Dracula 2000. It's different. Newer stuff is cheap. They're just running out of ideas. We're just running out of steam. The blood is the life. I guess Dracula's running out of it. I don't know how it will be revived. I think a lot of people want to take it back, where they're not going for lust and all this stuff and this gratuitous sex that is Dracula. And I think a lot of people are getting worn out by it. What do you, rebirth, sacrifice, rebirth, redeeming? All those things are in Dracula and the novel. So I'm going to tie it up here. I hope you guys enjoyed that presentation. But remember, Tuesday is the day. That is the birthday. So pop out your Dracula book, your audiobook, a Dracula film. I recommend, if you want to go with the book, try to find the BBC Dracula, not the stuff they just put out on Netflix. The BBC Dracula, I think it's 77 or 78, that was put out with Louis Jourdan. Little weird effects, but it does it to the book pretty closely. I think that's probably the closest one. You might have a different opinion. If you have a different opinion, pop it in the comments on the video. Let me know what your favorite Dracula was. And do read the book. Do try to do the audio or get the actual book and read it. It's a good read. I don't think it will take you that long if you're a fast reader. And I think you'll learn a thing or two about this sort of inversion of everything good, inversion of the sacrament. There are so many other elements in there. I'm sure you'll find this all over the internet. This is just my kind of take on it, where we forget that Dracula is evil. He's not a fallen angel that needs to be redeemed. He is defiant of God and acting like he is God, and he inverts everything that is good about humanity and sucks our blood dry and lives off of us so he can be this superior being. And that is all I have to say about that. Remember, subscribe, thumbs up. We will be doing the show on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern with Jaron Niche. Be a little more political, I think. So join me on Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern with Jerry Niche. We will be here. That'll be our weekly show, and I will have a weekly show up for the members. And I thank you guys very much. Cheerio, cheerio, guys.